Hello and welcome. I'm Vaishali Kohli and you're watching the China Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. Chinese Premier Li Qiang addresses the first session of the 20th G20 summit in Johannesburg. He urges the G20 economies to stay committed to solidarity, firmly uphold free trade and build an open world economy. At the G20 in Johannesburg, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and Chinese Premier Li Qiang reviewed the 2024-2027 plan, marking 55 years of ties, advancing balanced trade, scientific cultural cooperation. Japan rejected China's UN letter as baseless, insisting its Taiwan stance is unchanged. Tokyo urged for dialogue as Beijing warned of self-defense, deepening diplomatic strain between the two nations. China and Tajikistan launched their first foreign minister strategic dialogue, with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Li urging fresh progress in strategic partnership. Both sides agreed to implement leaders' consensus and deepen cooperation. Torrential rain triggered severe flooding in Hatyai, southern Thailand, prompting evacuations across 103 communities. Residents waded through rising waters as homes with emergency crews racing to assist affected neighborhoods. South Korea issues a level 1 forest fire alert as a wildfire spread across up to 50 hectares in Yangyang, Gangwon province. Hundreds were evacuated while authorities deployed 326 personnel, vehicles and helicopters to contain the blaze. U.S. President Donald Trump says that his Ukraine peace proposal is not final. This comes as U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has left for Geneva to hold discussions on the Ukraine peace plan. Israel says Hamas violated the Gaza ceasefire, sending a member into Israel-held territory to attack its soldiers. In response, Israeli forces confirmed they killed 5 senior Hamas members. A Japanese official has blasted China's claims that Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi has altered Japan's position on a Taiwan crisis as entirely baseless. In a letter delivered to the United Nations, China vowed to take resolute self-defense against Japan if it dared to intervene militarily in the Taiwan Strait. This comes as tensions between China and Japan are rising sharply, as a diplomatic dispute triggered by comments on Taiwan spills over into trade and public messaging. The trouble began after Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi suggested that a Chinese attack on Taiwan threatening Japan's survival could prompt a Japanese military response. Beijing has condemned the remarks, calling them erroneous and saying that they have fundamentally damaged the political foundation of China-Japan ties. I have my guest joining me on the broadcast, Hidekazu Sakai, professor of Kansai Gaidai University, Japan, and he's joining me from Osaka in Japan. I'd like to begin by asking you, how do you see this? I'd like your opening comments, please.
Okay, in my view, Chinese reaction to the Prime Minister Takaichi's the statement on Taiwan Strait was excessively overreaction because when Takaichi touched on an issue in Taiwan Strait, it was about the U.S.-Japan security alliance. And that means if the United States naval ships are in a situation that can be targeted or sort of involved in a military conflict in that area, that will be, or maybe could be, I think she said could be the situation for the Japan to work with the United States to to this situation, because Japan has a long-term alliance with the United States, more than the half century. Therefore, this is a very natural statement. But I think problem was for the China that Takaichi touched on the geographical location, that is Taiwan Strait. But actually, this statement came from the opposition party, the former leaders, Okada, Katsuya, who used to be also foreign minister in 2008 or 9 or so. He actually referred to the Taiwan Straits and the Bashi the strait. And he said if this area totally blocked by Chinese the Navy, what are you going to do about it? So Takaichi said, if United States ships is attacked by the Chinese force, it can be the situation for the Japanese self-defense force to react. She said only can be, and with all the comprehensive consideration. Therefore, she never said automatically. She did never say automatically is involved the Japanese force, the reaction to it. Therefore, I think Chinese reaction has been excessively overreaction.
Right, Mr. Sakai. Now, I also want to talk to you about China, who's vowed to take resolute self-defense if, of course, against Japan, if it dared to intervene militarily in the Taiwan Strait. So how do you see that?
Well, nobody knows. I mean, military conflicts is always unforeseeable. It's a development in any military the situations. Therefore, first of all, we have to really pay close attention to the what kind of scenario we can think of. Maybe we can think of the 100 scenarios. And the second is that biggest factor is the United States has committed to the defense of Taiwan. United States has never really clearly said we're going to defend Taiwan militarily after the China and the U.S. The normalization in 1970s. But obviously, United States has a Taiwan Relations Act saying that the United States will do something about whatever the situation in regarding the Taiwan's security. So I'm quite certain that the United States will react to the case of the possible Chinese invasion to Taiwan. And then Japan and the United States are alliance. Therefore, it's automatically it could involve Japan to get involved. Therefore, as Chinese knows it, but this is not really about security, but it's about politics of security, I would say. So I think the message of the Taiwan is that you don't want to talk about Taiwan. You don't want to talk about the security of us. If you think about the Taiwan, it's going to be our security problem. So you don't want to talk about it. But at the same time, this is a very important the topic for Xi Jinping, because Xi Jinping has been talking about the Chinese dream since his inauguration in 2010. And he kind of has implied that we could unify our country with Taiwan by force by 2027. Therefore, according to the Xi Jinping's sort of the pictures in the blueprint of the future, Taiwan is the center. So then, actually, the Xi Jinping's governance system is quite dictating all kind of governance system in China. Therefore, all the diplomats, bureaucrats want to sort of perform they're so as if they are really loyal to the Xi Jinping. Therefore, this issue is not only for international, but also very, very domestic politics situation.
Mr. Sakai, now the situation between the countries is extremely tense. But I want to ask you, what are the kind of political reactions that are coming in from Japan about the current situation?
Well, they are quite supportive of to the Takaichi statement because Takaichi did not say anything wrong. I think she just said very, very how do I say, normal, the commitment to the Japan security. Problem was, she just touched on the name of Taiwan. That's it. But since China has been taking measures like, we should stop, going to Japan like for tourism. Well, we should stop importing the seafood from Japan. Maybe we should stop all the forums meeting with the Japanese delegates, whatever. These are sort of non-political issues kind of altogether involved. And then some people maybe lose the profit. Some people maybe think that this is good because we don't want to have the Chinese tourists anymore. Or maybe we can look for the alternate, the customers or buyers, for our exporting goods. Therefore, I would say it's kind of mixtures of reaction to it. So therefore, this is an important and very interesting turning point. Japan's the perception on China. Is China is really our partner genuinely? They're really our friends or not? Do you think that we can trust China? I think this is a sort of we are receiving a very important sort of the message from China that maybe we should diversify our partnership in Asia. For example, Taiwan. Taiwan said we're going to import all the seafood from Japan because China is banning right now. Hey, let's go to the Japan because we love Japan. Let's go to enjoy Japan, things like that. And interestingly, now G20 is going on, and the G20 meeting said, I think Japan is doing right thing and China is the wrong. Therefore, in my opinion, I think G20, especially European countries, are very quite supportive of Japan. Therefore, I think next few weeks we're going to see how did people really react to this Japan and the China disputes.
And Mr. Sakai, my final question to you would be that how do you see a middle path that perhaps the two countries could take to resolve the current situation?
I believe so. I don't think China can continue doing like this on and on. I mean, I think the biggest loser will be China because, especially the Chinese tourists in Japan, they, actually many of them are repeaters. They know what the Japan is. And Japan is safe, and Japan is very welcoming to the foreign tourists, and we have great foods and everything. And so I'm not quite sure if Chinese people really believe the Chinese government, the orientation. China is increasingly diversified, and so therefore I think we should wait. And it takes a little longer, but I don't think China can continue doing like this.
Thank you, Mr. Sakai, for joining me on the broadcast. And now, Chinese Premier Li Qiang is urging G20 nations to stay united as the global economy slows. Speaking at the G20 summit in Johannesburg, he warned that rising protectionism and growing trade tensions are putting new pressure on global growth. Li called on members to defend free trade, strengthen multilateralism, and manage their differences through dialogue. He also pushed for reforms at the IMF, World Bank, and WTO, saying developing nations need a stronger voice. Li highlighted China's support for Africa, including an action plan for industrialization and new steps to ease debt burdens. Leaders at the summit echoed the call for solidarity, saying major economies must work together to drive inclusive and sustainable growth. Meanwhile, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni met with Chinese Premier Li Qiang on the sidelines of the G20 summit, where they reviewed the 2024-2027 plan, marking 55 years of bilateral ties, and discussed advancing balanced trade as well as scientific and cultural cooperation. All right, so viewers, we're telling you about the latest developments that are coming in. Now, of course, the G20 summit is currently on, and of course, the Chinese Premier Li Qiang is urging G20 nations to stay united as the global economy slows. So there are a few important topics that are being discussed at the G20 Summit 2025, which is taking place in South Africa. Now, speaking at the G20 Summit in Johannesburg, he of course warned that rising protectionism and growing trade tensions are putting new pressure on global growth. So, of course, now I do have my guest, Hirokazu Sakai, professor of Kansai Garai University, Japan, joining me from Osaka, Japan. Now, Mr. Sakai, we're of course talking about the Chinese Premier Li Qiang, who's urging G20 nations to stay united as the global economy slows. How do you see this?
Well, this is very important because I'm sure that China has been thinking about Trump, the tariff on a lot of countries in the world. But at the same time, this statement is kind of double-edged to me because China has been biggest exporter of rare earths. That is the very important material for today's high-tech industry. Therefore, China is kind of ruled itself by saying this. We all know that the last few months we have a serious issue that China has been politicized and export of rare earths to the world. And the United States and China had very, very tough negotiations. Then China is kind of lifting its the export limitation. This is very good for Japan as well, because as I touched on already, that China and Japan has been disputing over the Taiwan issue. But China cannot use this rare earths and export weapons to Japan anymore because China says we should maintain free trade in the world. Therefore, the China's the very strong political weapon is actually banned by itself. Therefore, this is a very important message to the world that okay, if you say so, China, you should stay in free trade. That's very important to us.
Mr. Sakai, there's also a new development there, which is about the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni meeting with the Chinese Premier Li Qiang on the sideline of the G20 summit. And they've, of course, reviewed the 2024-2027 plan. So what would you like to say about that?
Well, as you know, that Italy has left One Belt, One Road initiative of China. So I believe China wanted to reconstruct its relationship with Italy, but I'm not quite sure it would be successful because Meloni does not see the China as a very trusted partner anymore. But at the same time, maybe Meloni can be very pragmatic, politician to somehow use the China for its own Italian economy's development.
All right, Mr. Sakai. Now, there's another question that I have for you, which is that Lee's called on members to defend free trade and strengthen multilateralism and manage their differences through dialogue, of course. Do you see that as something that will resolve issues?
Well, economic interest is the biggest interest for China's futures. It has been always, but it's still very important. In order to maintain its international status, China needs to stay in this multilateralism, and otherwise, China's the future for economy isn't very bright. Therefore, China knows that, and China has been, One Belt, One Road initiative has been kind of questioned in many ways because of the possible debt trap or maybe sort of the using the economic assistance as a weapon to sort of subjugate the recipient states. Therefore, China needs to maintain its economic sort of influence to the world. Therefore, China needs to stay in this kind of forum. Otherwise, China will lose the international audience to appeal that we are not like a Trump well, we are kind of defender of free trade. So this is quite political, the situation for China today.
Thank you, Mr. Sakai, for joining me on the broadcast. And now, well, China and Tajikistan are moving to deepen their strategic partnership. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Li held his first strategic dialogue with Tajik Foreign Minister Sirojuddin Muridin in Beijing, launching a new mechanism to guide ties. Wang said the relationship has reached new highs under the leadership of Presidents Xi Jinping and Emomali Rahmon. Both sides agreed to boost trade, investment, and belt and road cooperation. China said it'll support Tajikistan's security efforts and oppose any external interference in its internal affairs. They also pledged stronger cooperation on counter-terrorism, regional security, and Afghanistan. And now I have my guest joining me on the broadcast, Andrew K.P. Leong, China strategist. And he's joining me from
China's connectivity to the global south in particular, but also bypassing the choke points, for example, in the South China Sea through the Malacca Straits, and also bypassing the other problematic choke points along the Red Sea, on which China's input of China's economic lifeblood depends through the sea lanes of communications. Now, this Belt and Road Initiative is overland with pipelines and also rail transport. It bypasses these choke points, but also connects China with Central Asia. So I think it is a highly strategic initiative. And then, of course, the landlocked countries, they are quite rich in natural resources, but then the economy is hampered by the lack of connectivities, because these are the states surrounded by land with no opening to the sea, and they have got very limited transport facilities to export their quite abundant mineral and other resources. So the China's Belt and Road Initiative brings along this infrastructure connectivity, and Tajikistan, of course, is also a very important country, very rich in natural resources as well.
Andrew, now how do you see the leadership of Presidents Xi Jinping and Emomali Rahmon? Because Wang has also said that the relationship has reached new heights under their leadership.
Because all these Central Asian countries is part of the this huge trading bloc with the Central Asian countries connected with the world, with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization in recent years has attracted the participation of countries even outside Central Asia. Countries have seeing this connectivity as also bringing economic benefits and geopolitical benefits to them. So again, it's a very important conduit for the global south. And under President Xi's leadership, the country is moving towards doubling down on China's connectivity, which of course is China's strategic advantage against, for example, President Trump's tariffs a wrecking ball, which is disrupting the world's supply and value chain. And by pivoting to the global south, which accounts for an increasing proportion of the global economy, in fact, China's export growth, in spite of the dwindling export to the United States, overall has in fact increased during the past couple of months, owing to China's pivot to the global south. And of course, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, together with countries in the Central Asia, a very important part of it.
And Andrew, my final question to you is about a very important issue, which is very, very important globally. Now, both the countries have pledged stronger cooperation on counter-terrorism, regional security, and Afghanistan. What would you like to say on that?
Well, of course, Afghanistan, again, is a very important passage route along the Belt and Road Initiative. Particularly Afghanistan, of course, suffered from years of wars, tracing back to the war on terror, and then with disastrous results for even the United States, and the United States eventually retreated from Afghanistan with tail behind its legs, as it were, because all the war on terror created was a havoc in these countries, and without improving Americans' influence. But on the other hand, the Afghanistan now is controlled by the countries like the Taliban, and of course that they are not they're just learning how to govern a country properly. And they need the infrastructure which has been devastated after all these years of war. And so they need China's investments in the infrastructure, improving the livelihood of the people, stabilizing the country. Now, Afghanistan also, of course, is Islamic state, and the problem for China is that the Afghanistan is connected with the Islamic extremist movements in Xinjiang, wanting to declare some sort of an independence. And of course, this is an extremely sensitive red line for China. But Afghanistan government is now being able to contain these elements, and is able to because they want, above all, connecting with China's economy, bringing livelihood, improving the livelihood of their economy, which has been completely devastated because of the war. So I think that there are lots of opportunities for Afghanistan and China to form a better relationship in spite of these separatist movements connected with the...
Andrew, we're running short of time, but I thank you for joining me on the broadcast. And now, well, heavy rain has triggered severe flooding in Thailand's southern Songkhla province. Hatyai district is now under a red flag evacuation order, with authorities declaring a severe flood emergency across 103 communities. Officials say 595 millimeters of rain fell over just 3 days, overwhelming drainage systems. Local media report residents are being urged to leave immediately for safer areas. South Korea has issued level 1 forest fire response alert as a wildfire has erupted in the forest of Yangyang in Gangwon province in the northeast part of the country, forcing the evacuation of hundreds of people. The Korean Forest Service has activated level 1 alerts as firefighting efforts have continued in popular camping and beach town, which is now estimated to cover between 10 to 50 hectares. Meanwhile, the forest authorities have deployed 101 fire suppression vehicles and 326 personnel to contain the blaze, and 25 helicopters which are on their way to be deployed. And that's a wrap on the China Report. Keep watching NewsX World for more news and updates from around the world.